All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the University of Michigan Meet the Chair webinar. As you can see, it's not just Meet the Chair, it's meet a bunch of people together, and I'll explain everybody that you see on the screen here in a second. First of all, I'll introduce myself. My name is Justin Dimick. I'm the Chair of Surgery at the University of Michigan, which is, I guess, my third year at this point in the role. And just to be clear, the Department of Surgery here includes several training programs, including general surgery, CTs, cardiothoracic surgery, vascular surgery, oromaxillofacial surgery, plastic surgery. So multiple programs in our department and a lot of fellowships as well. Today we're focused on, obviously, those of you applying to all those programs, and we're going to talk about some themes that I think are common across all of those training programs. As the chair, I'm interested in the success of all of them and the work to build the infrastructure that supports all of them. So the folks that you see on the screen with me here, we have 3 trainees and 2 staff, and I'll have them introduce themselves here in a section. And then there's some students that we've pulled forward to ask some specific questions to get us kicked off in the spirit of Ask the Chair. So I'll first ask my staff members here to introduce themselves. Teddy.
Hi, I'm Teddy. I direct strategic initiatives for the Department of Surgery. It's nice to see all of you on here.
Colleen.
Hi everyone, I'm Colleen Stone. I'm the communications lead for the communications team in the Department of Surgery.
And I'm going to go in the order on my screen. So Sarah, that's you next.
Hey, I'm Sarah. I'm one of the 4th year general surgery residents. I'm in my first year of research time currently, so I'm in my lab right now. It's really nice to see all of you guys.
Literally in the lab. There's like test tubes behind you.
Literally physically in the lab. There's centrifuges and test tubes behind me.
Chris?
Hi everyone, my name is Chris Audu. I am a 5th year vascular surgery resident in my 2nd year of research, also physically in the lab. It's nice to see all of you.
But you're blurred, so we can't see the test tubes behind you. Maya?
I'm Maya Anderson. I'm a 5th year general surgery resident in my 2nd year of research. And I am not in a basic science lab. I'm at my house, which has been my COVID research time since I've been doing health services research.
All right, great. Well, I am going to call on these trainees to help me answer questions, especially, they're obviously much closer to where you all will all be if you came here as interns next year. So I'll draw on their expertise and kind of knowledge as we answer questions. So why don't we go through, and I'm just going to continue in the order with our students that we've brought here on the panel to start us off, kick us off with some questions. Then there'll be an opportunity for you all to ask questions as well. And Colleen or Teddy, do you guys want to go through how we're going to do that? Should they start writing questions in the Q&A, or how would you like them to do that?
Yeah, and the Q&A would be great, and we'll pull them from there.
Perfect, great. So you guys can all start putting in questions now if you're interested. Those of you out in the audience can put in questions, but we'll start with Alec is first on my screen. So Alec, do you want to ask us your question?
Sure. Well, thank you again for having me, and Dr. Dimick for hosting this. Appreciate your time. I'm a 4th year at Harvard applying into surgery, and was curious that if you had to describe the Department of Surgery here at Michigan in one word, what would that word be? And then if you could elaborate on why specifically that word. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I like that question. That's a kind of a good place to start. And I think I'll have all the residents answer this as well. I think the word that pops into my mind when you ask that question is intentional. I think that we tend not to be reactive. We tend to be strategic in how we think about things. So from your perspective, we're very intentional in how we think about training our residents from a technical perspective. We're very intentional about preparing you to be a future leader. We're intentional about preparing you to have opportunities to pursue academic work. And we don't like to rely on chance. And I think the intentionality spills over into how we think about culture and how we create expectations around culture and civility. It also spills over into how we think about equity and making sure people have equal opportunities to mentorship and sponsorship. I think we have a question on mentorship later, so I won't go too detailed, but that's intentional is the word. And I specifically didn't choose a word like, successful or excellent or anything like that, because I think intentional is is a much more humble word, because we make lots of mistakes, and we have a lot of initiatives that we're trying to have certain goals, but we haven't met our goals, and we do fall short here and there. So intentionality, I think, is the right word. All right, Sarah, what's your word? Coffee is your word.
Coffee is my word. Actually, a different word that starts with a C. I think something, either camaraderie or collaboration. The thing that always is the most true for me as a resident here, when people ask me what I like best about being a University of Michigan surgical resident, it's just the people who I get to work with. And that is at every level. That's at the level from the med students through my co-residents and up through the faculty. And I just, the relationships that I've been able to build here with the people who I work with, it's people who are some of the best teachers and best friends I've had in my life. And really people who are invested. I think there's co-investment in each other's successes, and being there to support each other when you have, inevitable bad days and failures. And I know that the support that I have here from the people who I work with is the thing that's helped me, succeed the way that I have so far in residency, and really helped me get to this point. And so I'm endlessly grateful for that.
Chris, what's your word?
Alec, that's a very good question. I would use the word opportunity. I came here because of the multiple opportunities that are available at Michigan that are not as available at other institutions. For instance, I'll tell you right now that I'm in a chemistry lab. Behind me are test tubes and beakers. And I've had the opportunity to really foster that part of me that is interested in medicinal chemistry. For instance, how do you make drugs? How do you get them from molecules to the patients? And so that sort of opportunity, in addition to, from a research standpoint, in addition to the multiple opportunities for mentorship and leadership development and surgical training combined, all of those things are what made me choose Michigan. So
I thought you were going to say macrophage, Chris.
yeah, we have to treat them. They have to develop medications to treat macrophages when they go bad.
Maya?
Man, I was hoping not to go third. I guess fourth, stealing all the words. I think I'm going to say connection. I think it's both, like, a little bit of what Sarah and Chris both said, but I think that one, I can't say highly enough about how much I love the people here. My co-residents in the classes below me and above me, and in my class, like, they're my family support system. My family is far away in the West Coast, and so these are the people that I go to when I'm like have a cold and I'm being sniffly, and it's as little as that, or to talk about a frustrating day or frustrating case or celebrate a win. It's really nice to have people around you that you want to be with inside and outside of the hospital, and share kind of your journey together. So I think that's one really unique thing, and that extends to faculty as well. I think we have a really nice connection between our residents and our faculty here and our medical students. It's like a big kind of chain of connections. And I think the other side, I think, of that connection is the research opportunities and academic opportunities that we have. The University of Michigan is extremely connected in different departments, different schools. And it's just, if you need something or you want something, someone knows someone and can help you find out how to do that crazy idea or research that crazy project. And I think that that's something that's just amazing. It's like an endless menu that I can't decide what to order off of it, but it's a really unique thing that we have here, and a really great part of what makes the Department of Surgery great.
Awesome, great. Well, thank you. I won't make you all answer every question. What I'll do now is I'll let you raise your hand if you want to weigh in on a particular question, and then I'll call on you. But I thought that was a good one to have everybody weigh in on to kick us off. So next on my list is Maggie. What was your question for us? Or me, I guess.
My name is Maggie Leach. I'm a fourth year at Dartmouth applying into surgery. Thank you so much for having me. My question is, how is mentorship, both formal and informal, incorporated to support residents? Thank you so much.
So that's a great question. I think it builds off, I said intentional before. We try and be very intentional about mentorship. But I think there's the informal part is really, really important as well. And so I'll talk about that first. I try, like I call myself the mentor in chief, and that doesn't mean that I mentor everybody, but that means I try and make sure that we have a positive culture of mentorship and that our faculty are expected to mentor their residents. And I think we definitely have, I can't imagine a better group of faculty for mentoring the residents, to be honest. It's just people are really, that's why they're here, to be perfectly frank. And so that informal and that culture of mentorship, I think, is really, really important. But then I think you do need to put programming around that. And so for our faculty, we do something called launch teams, where every faculty hire has a team of mentors from different aspects of their career where they help them. And we have incorporated some of those principles into the residency program. But what I'll say is some of the residents like them and some of the residents don't want them because they're like, well, I'm set, I have my mentors, etc. So like we have Chris is in one of our vascular surgeons lab, Kathy Gallagher's residents like are can't slow down enough to be as part of a large launch team process. Chris, you can correct me if I'm wrong there, but like they're already humming and they're getting great mentorship, and she gets them all F-32 grants and everything. So like I think what we do is we offer it now as an opportunity for anybody who wants to participate and to develop a launch team can do that. It probably makes sense if you're somebody kind of straddling multiple research areas or clinical area and research area that don't naturally come together. So if we need to convene that launch team formally, and I don't know, probably Teddy could give us some more color commentary on what fraction of the residents get a formal launch team. Is it half, or what would your guess be, Teddy?
I'd actually say it's a little bit more than half. All residents going into that ADT time are offered one. So probably more like 75–80% of them take it. Nobody's forced to do it, but certainly if you want one, it is offered to you. And there's a staff support system that will help to administer it as well. Yeah.
So I think it's because you're going to get a lot of like formal during your clinical training. It's obviously the residencies are completely structured for the clinical education, but we create the launch team process around the academic development time, which then kind of extends into the career counseling and the fellowships and all that kind of stuff, because that's usually your team of mentors is the one that helps you navigate the next steps in your career after you finish residency, as well as your academic productivity and selection of the specialty and fellowship and all that. So great question. Any of the residents want to comment on that, on whether or not you have one or don't have one, how found it helpful?
So I have some, it's not exactly a formal launch team, but similar to what Dr. Dimick was saying about what Chris has going on in Dr. Gallagher's lab. I'm in a basic science lab too. And that's a skill set that Chris has strong background in that. He has a PhD. I did basic science when I was in undergrad for a number of summers. And so I had some skill sets, but it had been a long time since I had been in that. And so leading into my research time, like my direct mentor pulled together a group of faculty who do basic science to help me work on getting the skill sets I needed, but also to work on grantsmanship and to work on writing grants, which is something that I think we get really a lot of excellent exposure to as residents here, and it's something that I hadn't had any practice doing before. And so I think there's definitely, an academic mentorship like Dr. Dimick talked about is so important to help you really make the most of the 2 years that you have to do your research. And I think there's also, as far as kind of the informal aspect of mentorship goes, all of us most of our rotations are here at the main hospital, even the children's hospital is attached to that. And so the faculty really know the residents well, because when you're down in the operating room, like when I'm in pre-op, I might be pre-oping a patient for like a breast case, but Dr. Dimick is down there pre-oping his patient for his MIS case, and we all run into each other all the time, and you see everyone in the cafeteria. And I think just that geographic closeness for all of us really facilitates people knowing you well and taking a lot of interest in what you're doing every day. And that really, I think, grows the informal mentorship aspect of our program.
All right, great. Let's move on to Sarah's question.
Hi, thank you again for doing this. This is a really wonderful opportunity. I'm Sarah. I'm a fourth-year medical student at the University of Pennsylvania applying into general surgery. And a lot of you touched on this, I think, with Alex, great question, but we've heard all these great things about University of Michigan. In your opinion, what makes general surgery training at Michigan unique?
Yeah, so I'm highly biased because not only am I the chair, but I trained here. It's like that commercial. Like I'm not only I'm a customer, right? So I'm very biased in this. But what I'll say from my perspective, I think the things that make us different make us unique. I think is a combination of the fact that we have a really, really special faculty who care deeply about education and educating in the operating room, in the laboratory, and then just the personal success and well-being of our residents. It's a really tight group of faculty and residents, and you've heard some of that today. But I think the combination, and then I think I'll reflect back on Chris's word. He said opportunity. We have a really robust investment from the department in our faculty and their scholarly work and their frankly anything that they want to do that impacts American surgery in a positive way, and you get to be part of that. And we have people that are trying to move the needle in education, in science, in clinical care, in delivery, innovation, in all these areas, and you frankly get to be part of that. Whether it's Sarah, who works in a basic science laboratory, but also is taking our faculty leadership development program. I think you're doing that, Sarah. Like this, it's a ton of opportunity every which way you look. So I think the combination of opportunity and culture make us fairly unique. And I actually, as a leader, I firmly believe that success comes from having the right culture and having a vision that supports that success. And this year we were #1 in NIH funding for the second year. We moved up in the residency rankings to #1 this year, and I only think that is reflective of the culture that we've been working on intentionally building here. And from a resident perspective, that's a culture not of service, but of career development, like professional development, and making sure that you achieve your goals. That's like what I'm preoccupied with when it comes to residency training. Any other residents want to take that one? Just raise your hand. Either real hand or the little hand that pops up in Zoom.
I'll take a stab at it. I think I'm biased too because I was a medical student at Michigan, and when I started my clerkships, I was firmly opposed to being a surgeon, and so this department inspired me to become a surgeon, and then also inspired me to stay away from my family because I loved it here so much and wanted to be here for training. And so I think that that's a ringing endorsement, but I haven't experienced other departments, so it's hard for me to say, what makes us specifically different. But I'll echo, I think one thing that was really important to me when I was looking at programs is not just the faculty investment in the residents, but the residents' investment in each other. And I think we're very much invested in each other and each other's success. And I think that's unique and important. I never feel like I'm having to compete against my co-residents or having to watch my back or anything like that. I feel very much supported and that people are watching out for me. And I think that that's maybe not, of course, unique to Michigan alone, but is a really important aspect of the program that I think you can't necessarily see on paper in any way, but you can feel when you're here.
Can I say one other thing, Dr. Dimick? I think something else that is unique. So I went to med school somewhere different and then came here, and something that I have noticed here in the 3 years that I've been clinical, and then however long I've been out in research, is there's a real willingness of our senior residents, like chief residents, and then also our faculty, like program directors and faculty leadership, and Dr. Dimick, to hear any sort of concerns that the residents have, and then to be flexible in approach and responding to them. So I think we've seen programmatic changes in the 3 years that I've been here that have been in response to residents seeing that there could be a better way to do something, and people are always very receptive to that. And I think that kind of the tradition of hierarchy in surgery makes that not always possible. And I think here we have really we're really fortunate that we are very heard in the department.
Great. And that's, I think, brings us to our last pre-chosen question. So Katie.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me and for hosting this. My name is Katie. I'm a 4th year at Vanderbilt, and I'll be applying into general surgery this cycle. My question is, how do you feel like the residency program supports both the professional and both personal as well growth of their residents?
That's a really good question, and probably better answered by the residents than me, because they can give you probably a more honest interpretation of that. But I guess that from a chair perspective, a lot of what we talk about is professional. Now, personal growth can be defined in many different ways, right? There's personal, professional, and there's personal, non-professional growth, both of which are important because you are one person. And I think that what we can do as a department to ensure, to help you grow as a person over your time here, is to provide a professional environment that is conducive to growth, and that's a big part of my job. But also, I think encouraging people to come to work whole and to bring all the pieces of themselves to work, and that I think is not having to separate yourself into two persons. I think is probably the best thing we can do, and that's a cultural thing. I think promoting inclusion and promoting a collegial environment, a civil environment where everybody feels that they can fully be themselves. And we have a history of training professors of surgery. That's what we do. We're a very academically oriented place. But I think accepting, once people figure out exactly how they want to have impact on American surgery, to fully embrace that professional phenotype as well. I think that's another piece of something that I think we've changed in the last kind of 5 to 10 years in that regard. In that, like, it used to be, you had to like do molecules and cells and go be a professor at one of the places that like you guys are all in medical school, right? And now I think we think impact is so much more broad than that. It means community activism. It means being a great leader in private practice, and it means working for a nonprofit and moving some aspect of healthcare forward. It means all those things and more. But the residents, why don't you guys answer that? Anybody?
I can start since I've been relatively quiet. The question was professional and personal goals, essentially. So I think from a professional standpoint, you can't really go wrong with Michigan. You're going to come out well-trained, you're going to be sought after, and you're going to be have the opportunities to engage in the different societies and apply for all the different resident awards and so forth. So professionally, you will really, once you've decided what sort of phenotype of surgeon you want to be, we will help you get there. Personally, I would argue that that is also true with respect to what you want to do or be, or if you have, if that includes family or not, if that includes, just making great friends and having great adventures. All of those things are here. And we also have people who are doing those things and can come alongside you. So I think that for me, one of the enduring things for me that I've gained here, even though I'm not a general surgery resident, I was a vascular resident. Some of my best friends are the general surgery cohort that I came in with. And so I have a band of brothers, if you will, that we've all been going through the same thing. And now we're kind of moving through those stages together. And we support each other personally, but also professionally as well. And that's also true not just at the horizontal level, but even at the vertical level. What I mean by that is for leadership. So people like Dr. Dimick, my program director, Dr. Coleman, and others who I come in contact with. So whatever it is that you want to do, or as long as you voice it and you're willing to share, we'll help you get there. And that has been true for me while I've been here at Michigan.
Great. All right. And we have another panelist joining us here in a minute, but maybe I'll pull up one of these other questions that I've gotten while we're waiting. Are there any large changes to the department expected in the next 5 to 10 years? I think we have a pretty clear set of values and programs that we're trying to run to ground in terms of creating an optimal environment for residents and faculty to make and staff to make contributions. I think probably one big thing is we're building a new hospital. So if you were to come here interview in person, you would see a big hole in the ground where we're building a new $1 billion bed tower, which will be mostly surgery, which is relevant to your experience. I think we're already probably more busy than we would need to be to train our residents, but we'll probably be busier and probably have to grow some of our residency programs over that time to some degree, but not in a huge way. That's probably the biggest thing I can see happening in the next 5 to 10 years. Let's see. How did Michigan approach OR time and caseload during the pandemic, and how would the department handle another similar situation that reduced caseload requirements? Yeah, so we shut down in April or March of, I guess, April of 2020 pretty aggressively, but it wasn't for very long. We were up and running pretty quick. And then all the cases kind of came back, and they came back, we operated longer days. And so I don't know if I don't think there were big gaps left in our training in terms of caseloads. But let's see, Sarah, you were what, an HO2 when all that happened?
Yeah, I was a 2 in spring of my second year, and then obviously it continues and continued through my 3rd year. And I would agree with you. I think the operating rooms didn't feel shut down for all that long to me, although time was a little bit of a blur then. But I wouldn't say that technically it changed my old global technical experience in the operating rooms as a junior resident from my 1 to 3 year. And I think the other thing that we do here is we have, I would say, a moderate amount of ICU exposure as general surgery residents, and the general surgery residents, I think took one of the leadership roles actually in the hospital around we manage the patients who are on ECMO. VV ECMO for their COVID care. And so I think that was in some ways it certainly changed for a period of time our educational opportunities, but if anything, I think made me certainly a stronger clinician. And then since then, like you said, the operating rooms are completely back to running, if not at what they were before, beyond what they were before. So I would say.
Yeah, it's something that we worried a lot about, we worried a lot about it. We thought a lot about it. I met with the program directors about it, but then it was just so clear. Once we ramped up fast, and we were like busier. We were operating about 120% capacity, including like Saturdays and evenings for like a couple months. And the number of cases we did in 2020 was actually more than we did the year before. I think probably because a lot of hospitals pushed emergency cases over that first summer to us. Probably Chris probably saw this on vascular. They were the vascular team was like incredibly busy as other hospitals got their ICU squeezed. Our referrals for kind of complex emergencies went way up. So I think that there was definitely no drop off in clinical volume. I think probably the bigger challenge that we faced was just the emotional toll that our residents took, spending a lot of time in really busy ICUs and seeing a lot of death. And a lot of people dying without family allowed, especially early in the pandemic. I think that the biggest, at least the meetings that I had and the kind of the time that we spent with the residents, it was more just, it was a tough year emotionally. And if anything, they were busier, both in our ICUs and in our ORs. It was a tough year. But as someone said at some point, one of the chairs said in a meeting with our dean in August of 2020, this chair said, "I haven't met anybody anywhere who's better off than they were 6 months ago. And so I think we all had a tough year in 2020. As Sarah is making some silver linings, I think there were some silver linings to be had, but only in retrospect, because it was rainy when we were going through it. All right, Madison, you joined us. You've probably been listening in, but we're going to have you introduce yourself, and then you can ask your question.
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Madison Cook. I am a fourth year medical student from Meharry Medical College in Nashville. I'm applying into general surgery. My comment and question was, as applying into general surgery, programs that, I looked into, I looked at, how many people of color are actually, within the residency classes. And what really attracted me to look into Michigan was that there was a consistency of the diversity of the classes. And my question was, how do you all maintain and support the residents that you do recruit as they matriculate through residency? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. And what I'll say is if you look at our last couple of classes, there's probably more diversity than there was probably in our senior classes even, and certainly way more diversity than when I trained here. I guess going back 21 years now. And I'll say that probably maybe 5-6 years ago, we made a concerted effort to foster diversity in our residency class and in our faculty. And obviously the residency class totally changes, within 7 years, you can completely influence the nature of your residency class. But the faculty takes longer than that. And I'll say that I remember if you were to sit in on one of our residency selection meetings, 10 years ago, you would hear this term like they fit here, right? And those types of terms. And it was maybe like, a handful of years ago when we realized like that was just obviously not the right way to select residents. In fact, and that actually was counter to diversity and counter to, having frankly the best class and having the most talented people come into our residency program. And obviously, we changed our selection process and tried to eliminate those types of biases from our thinking and our selection. And this process we call, or the programs that we had put around to establish diversity and then once we bring the best people in to help everybody succeed, we call it the Michigan Promise, and you'll probably hear about this on the interview trail. The Michigan Promise has two parts of it. One is to make sure we select the best people for faculty and for residents, and then to make sure everyone's supported equally. And then we have an environment that fosters everyone's success. Those are two pieces of it. So part of that, we talked a little about mentorship and sponsorship and leadership development. All that is part of the Michigan Promise, right? Making sure we have equal access to mentorship, sponsorship, and that everyone's supported equally, that we think about and work on our environment kind of relentlessly. And then we have procedures and protocols around recruitment for faculty and for residents. And you can actually, it's right behind me there. Those are all the different programs that we have in this Michigan Promise. And I would like to be clear about it, that like we are at the starting point and not the finish line of this process. I think anytime this is the infinite process, like building an inclusive culture and an environment that supports everybody. You never can get there and say mission accomplished, destination achieved, right? That's just something you got to continue to improve at. It's an infinite game and an infinite process because there's infinite barriers to be overcome. But the first word I used to Alex's question was intentional, right? We're trying to be intentional about it. Do we fail? Yeah, we fail all the time. And you mentioned we've increased the diversity a lot in our classes. And is it always a perfect environment for women in our program, for those underrepresented in medicine, those who support LGBTQ? Is it perfect? No. We fail all the time. We are always trying to improve the culture and the environment. And I'm the chair of the department. I'm not the dean of the medical school. I'm not I don't hire and fire everybody in this building. And so we collectively can't control the entire culture, but we can do the best with the culture that we do have control over. And that's what we're trying to do. I said once again, starting point, not a finish line situation. But I think our classes, residency classes, are much more diverse than they were when I was training here. That's for sure. And I think it's also, does that mean we don't want to train white men? The answer to that is no. But if you are a white man and you come to this program, you need to recognize your privilege, and you need to understand what it means to be an ally. And those are kind of the requirements. And I think I'm clear in our expectations about that. I ask, for those of you who are going to interview here, let's see, I'll give you some inside information since a bunch of you are here. I ask everybody I interview about their experience with their privilege. No matter what you look like, what your gender is, I ask you what your experience with your privilege. And it's a question that if you haven't thought about it before, it's really hard to answer, and it's really apparent. So for any planning on interviewing here, you might want to reflect on that. And it's the paradox in that question is that it's the people with the least privilege that tend to have the most perspective, which is a paradox. All right, Sarah, Chris, Maya, do you guys want to comment on this?
I can comment, I think, on definitely. I think Dr. Dimick covered so much already, so I won't repeat. But I will say that it's definitely something that the residents have been heavily involved in as well. And I think Sarah talked about this earlier, but I think a unique part of this program and an important part is how involved the residents are in everything that we do and how much we're allowed to have a voice. And it's solicited as being part of committees and panels. And also if you just send Dr. Dimick an email and say, I want to meet and talk to you about something, or Dr. Hughes, we will get that meeting and we will have that conversation. And I think the openness to the feedback is really important, because with the changing landscape of surgery and also the changing residency demographics and like our backgrounds and our wants and needs and desires for the future, like it requires flexibility and change. And a lot of things that are in place that worked before aren't going to work anymore, or aren't going to work for everyone. And so how do you fix that is that you listen when people have feedback or when people express their needs to you. And I think that that's something that the department has made a very conscientious and intentional effort to do for us. And it doesn't mean that it's easy all the time, but I think what's really nice is knowing that you have a voice and you have support, and that you can say what you need and work towards getting it. And I think that's how you maintain diversity, and you make sure that everyone finds success as you listen to your residents and you listen to the people, and you not just like hear them out, but you also respond and trust kind of their assessment of what they need.
And this also might be like a quick moment to talk about, we changed the way that we're reviewing residency applications this year, which is outlined some on our website. And so maybe Colleen or one of us can link it in the chat, but every single residency application this year was reviewed by someone who is on what we're calling the residency review committee, who was trained in how to, through a variety of modules, and how to address a lot of these questions and bias in recruitment, traditional bias, and kind of the way that we look at a surgical resident or a surgeon. And then every application got a full read through from start to finish, which it's pretty novel for the way that residency applications are typically reviewed. And then it was scored on a variety of characteristics that weren't just related to, and I wish I had the full rubric in front of me, but that talked about academics, but also talked about resilience and commitment to kind of DEI and things like that applicants had shown in the past. And so I think that it's an approach that grew from actually residents expressing interest in doing it this way. And I think that's really meaningful and a big step in the right direction for our recruitment process.
All right, I see another question in the question Q&A from Joanna Borst. Thanks so much time for hosting this. Listening to the amazing answers to the first question, something that came up multiple times is people and the collaboration between them. Are there specific things done on a program level to help build the development of that culture? That is a good question. I think we've talked a lot about culture, and how do we think here a lot about how you build culture and how you change culture. And I think culture is nothing more than how we do things around here. That's kind of the colloquial kind of definition of culture. And so I think something like this is just it's probably the collaboration and focus on the impact of the work and not like your personal career is something that I think is a Michigan thing. It's something that doesn't exist everywhere, but people generally are generous with credit and with opportunity, because we try and see the world not as a zero-sum game, but as from an abundance mentality where there's opportunity for everyone to have success. And I think that's something that spans the whole institution as a value. So I think those are cultural things, but I think the way as a leader, and before this I was a research center director, I think probably the most important thing we can do as leaders is to role model that and then value that in our institutional and our kind of cultural, and who we value. And so I'll give you one example. We have a lot of professorships in our institution, and we have more people who are probably deserving of professorships. So the question is, who gets professorships? And for me, it's people who mentor other people. And so I spend a lot of time, and whenever I give someone a professorship and I send out an email or whatever it is, I always note it. I always say in there, who they mentor, the scale of their mentorship, and kind of value that show that I value that as an organization. So that's just like one kind of small example that I think about. But am I missing something, Chris, Sarah, Maya?
I think at the resident level too, there's something to create like more collaboration and community. We have a new program that was also kind of spearheaded by a resident called Anastomosis. That's which is a great name. Sorry, there's a lot of people in here, but it pairs a resident in research with a medical student who's interested in going into surgery with a surgical faculty member. And then there's set up meetings throughout the year. It's almost like, like a model of what you would have if you were in like a fraternity or sorority, where you have a family and that family grows with you through your time in training. And so it gives you people like senior to you and junior to you as a resident to help, who help you, help you if you have questions or concerns or anything like that. And I think that, just furthers our collaboration with each other.
Yeah, I mean, we have a catalog of those types of programs that if you come interview here, you'll see some. We probably have webinars on file now. Colleen, is that right? About all the different programs we have to foster those types of relationships. Yeah. I don't think we're going to repeat all the webinars this year, but we have them on file if you all want to see. And we're doing this in the middle of the day now because evening webinars went out of fashion in 2021 for wellness. So we have a question from Ian here. Ian McCurry, fourth year from Penn. I'm curious how Michigan worked to safely ensure resident autonomy, both operative and decision making. Yeah, I mean, we think a lot about that, and I think it starts with who we hire as faculty. We hire faculty who are dedicated to teaching residents, not to doing the cases themselves. So one of the questions that my predecessor would always ask faculty, and the residents probably don't know this, is, are you comfortable operating from the assistant side of the table? And I think that probably our residents don't know how much autonomy they actually get. Maybe you do, but relative to, they usually figure it out when they get into fellowship, and they see where they are with their skills and their autonomy versus some of their peers. And you know how I know that? Because they all email me when they get to fellowship. and they email our program directors and CC me. So I get to hear it all. But what do you guys think? Do you guys have perspective on the degree of autonomy? I mean, I think we have dedicated faculty who care a lot about resident development. We spend a lot of time thinking about it in our clinical competency committees, and we have very dedicated surgical educators here in our department. But what do you guys think? What's your perspective as actual? And the thing is in our residency, you'll notice the residents aren't afraid to tell me if I'm wrong. They probably won't say it on a webinar, but they'll tell me later. What do you guys think? Chris, you've been quiet for a while. Vascular surgery, you're almost done.
I've got a few more years. I've got to get out of the lab first. The answer to answer that question, yes, there's a lot of autonomy that occurs, and it's graduated. So you're not going to be doing a case by yourself as an intern. That's just not going to happen. But as you become more senior and you also show a level of independence, if you will, with regards to planning, case planning, and regards to caring for patients, that autonomy comes. And I go back to finish up my last 2 years next summer. But in my experience so far for the first 3 clinical years, it's been one where by the end of third year, I was able to start cases, do some exposures, and then for the critical portions, the attendings would come in depending on the case level and depending on if there was a fellow and so forth in the case as well. So I think the system is set up in such a way that by the time you're done, you will be fine. You will be well trained. Maya and I look forward to operating together as chiefs when we go back, and so it'll be a good time. So I hope that answers your question. But if there's any particular thing you're looking for, I can try and answer that as well.
Yeah, I think we get a great deal of autonomy here. And part of that is also because I've also received some of those emails from past residents in their fellowships and now attending Hood and telling us how good we have it here. Because I think part of the growth is always wanting more autonomy, right? We always want to do more and we always want to level up. So it never feels like quite enough, but it's always, I think we're pushed to a really safe and healthy level. I think one thing that makes it safe is that even though we're certainly given opportunities to find our limits and find our boundaries, I know that I can always call and ask for help always, and I'm not scared to do it or embarrassed to do it. And that's like the middle of the night. Even if that's like when I was an intern, I remember like pinning down a PGY2 and being like, do I have to call about this? Like, please help. Is this okay? Is this an okay decision? And I think that, and then calling the chief and getting feedback in the morning. Did I need to call you about that? Did you feel like I needed to call you about that? Is it okay? Those sorts of things. That's how you learn and grow, and getting that feedback and having that comfort to both call when you are concerned, and then also to be able to have that open kind of discussion of whether how can I get better is really how we grow. And then I think our progression through the years, we kind of get progressively more and more on services even before we do our true chief years in terms of services with progressive autonomy and roles on those services, like our acute care surgery service. You kind of get your first taste of what it's like to evaluate patients on your own and make judgments when you're a second year and you're emergency consult resident. And then as a third year, you get to be the mini chief on the service and you own it on a couple weekends alone. And that is a service where I think you do a lot of your kind of early growth in terms of patient management and assessment, and really trying to come up with your kind of own what feels like at first like a scary decision to make, but truthfully your attending is right there with you, and there's a chief also there with next door that you can ask for their opinion or their help, and so you're never really alone, but they let you have that independence of thought and practice, and I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, I think, and those are great examples, and I think that from a clinical decision-making perspective, I don't think anybody's ever complained about the autonomy that you get here. You know, you're an intern, you learn a lot. Your second year, you're the emergency consult resident for like one of the like busiest, most sick hospitals in the country, right? And then as a third year, you're a chief. You're doing kidney transplants and running services, and it's really, at least on general surgery, and it's busy. And then you come back as a 4, and you're a trauma chief for a big chunk of the year. So from a clinical perspective, and then from a surgical perspective, you know, as I think Maya said, you always want, yeah, I could do all these cases myself. You don't fully realize that all the the attending secretly doing things from their side of the table, maybe until you get to be an attending, and you need to learn those secret things. But at the same time, I think we have our ACS service. You do a lot of teaching assistant cases, as Maya said, and that's a great opportunity. We have a VA hospital. I think in general, we just have a high complexity, and we don't have many fellowships here. So the residents get into high complexity cases really early, and get a great operative experience, and with progressive autonomy. Let's see. One other question we should probably end on, which is kind of a fun question. I'm from a big city. Who's this from? This is from Margaret Pichardo. I'm from a big city. Coming to Michigan would be a big change for me, which is a bit scary. Can someone comment on which things you love about living in Ann Arbor? So I probably am not fit to answer this question, because I grew up in a town that makes Ann Arbor seem like a big city. I grew up in a town in Vermont of about 2,000 people. So I did go through, I came here from Baltimore, which Baltimore is a pretty big city. But Ann Arbor is about 125,000 people. When there isn't a football game, it's about 250,000 people when there is a football game. But I think from my perspective, obviously I'm also, I have, I trained here in an era when you didn't move to a city, you moved to a hospital, and you lived there until you were done training. But now that's not the way that training is, thank goodness. So I was moving here, not worried about, because I slept when I was in the hospital, pre 80-hour work week situation. But what we do, Michigan is a great college town, so there's a lot of sporting events, and I have always have a lot of extra football tickets, and some of those residents just used mine last weekend to go to the Michigan Northwestern game. Basketball is good in Ann Arbor right now too. Hockey, so all kinds of sports, I think. But other than that, I'm trying to think of what else that I'm a little out of touch with what the residents do in their social lives on purpose. So why don't you guys answer that question? Does anyone come from a big city, by the way? Sarah, you're from like Indiana, right?
Connecticut.
Purdue.
Yeah.
Purdue.
Yeah. I think that because Ann Arbor's a college town, like Dr. Dimick was saying, there's actually quite a bit of going on, more so than I think just the population size would suggest, because obviously people are coming from all over the country and from also the state of Michigan to come to school here. So in Ann Arbor itself, there's some really, I'm a big foodie person. There's some really amazing restaurants and a lot of like diverse different food types that you can go out and eat. They've done great stuff, like a lot of towns and cities since COVID started, to support the restaurants, where they've been closing down the main streets and having tables outdoors so that you can eat outside in the warmer months. And that's been really nice. So I've been enjoying that. Then there's also a good number of breweries here in town. And then I think another real benefit of being in Ann Arbor, especially while I'm not from a big city, I have spent time living in big cities before coming here. And Detroit is 30 minutes up the road. Detroit has an incredible like food scene, going out scene. The art museum is the DIA is amazing. There's music, and then if you want to get somewhere even bigger, the airport is right there too, and is easy to get in and out of. So all of us, I take advantage of going to Detroit frequently. All of us gather frequently at some of the bars and restaurants here in Ann Arbor, and then it makes it nice for us to travel during your limited vacation times really easy.
Can I pick up? I'm gonna pick up, Sarah, where you left off, because I went to med school at a place where the nearest airport was an hour and a half away, and the nearest biggest airport was 2 hours or so away, and it was always a pain to get in and out. So having an airport that is close by, that is easily accessed, and that is a major hub for some major airlines is wonderful. It's amazing for me. It's life-changing because you can just go in, pop in, and be on your way to where you need to be. So I think that that's huge. The other thing is, if you really need to get your city fix, there are a number of big cities around, both nationally and internationally. So, you know, Canada is just across from Detroit. And if you're looking for a big city experience there, Chicago is 3 hours away by car or by train. And as Sarah was saying, Detroit is not too far either. So I think the beautiful thing about Ann Arbor that I've come to realize and enjoy is that whatever you're looking for to do, there's probably someone here who's doing it, or there's a group here that is doing it. You may have to ask around, like you can't just walk down the street and it shows up to you, but there is someone here who is doing it. And if it's not here, it's not too far away. So.
Colleen, you made some nice comments. Why don't you? I liked it. You're very
Yeah,
look
so
around.
I didn't train here, and I'm not operating, thank goodness, but I did move here from a big city, Jersey City, about 10 years ago. And, you know, I was ready for a little bit of culture shock just because it is a much different scale. And I did find that whatever you want, it's here, smaller scale than in a big city. You can find all kinds of food, pubs, bars. I'm huge into outdoor activities. So if you're into cycling, running, that's really lovely. In Ann Arbor, it is so easy to walk out your door in any direction and find a little bit of nature without going far. And I know that our residents have spoken to how easy it is to live here. You know, I think things are certainly better than they were when Dr. Dimick was training, but it's still a busy time, and you know, your free time is valuable. And when you want to go, you know, go shopping or something, it's nice to be somewhere where it's easier to do that as opposed to, you know, getting on a subway and schlepping stuff home. And I know people really value that. So I can't say enough about how nice it is to live here. It's a change no matter where you're coming from, I'm sure, but I'm sure any of the residents would be happy to tell you more about their experience.
Yeah, I'll just throw in a quick plug because I don't want to run us too much over time, but it's not about, you know, being a big city. In fact, one of the perks of it being kind of the small town part of it is that the cost of living here is extremely affordable. We have all the nice things, but it's also not crazy expensive. Parking is extremely reasonable. I think my husband had a stroke when we went to Seattle, and it was like $20 for 30 minutes to park downtown. And he was like, whoa. But we don't have that here. You can always find parking. There's a million garages, and traffic is like a very loose term to describe when sometimes it's a little bit slower to drive down the road. But it's really, really nice. And I think that it makes the time that you get out of the hospital, like it's really easy to capitalize on it because you don't have things like terrible traffic and cost problems. I think that in terms of living, like I bought a house. A lot of people buy houses or condos. That was something that was important to me, and to have a backyard with a fence for my dog because I'm a dog mom. And I think those sorts of things, like the freedom to be able to do that. It's just me and my husband on my salary. And so we're able to do that here and live comfortably without having to be like worried every month about whether I can also indulge my fancy cheese habit. And so I think that that's something that's just been really important for my quality of life, because I don't want to have to stress about all of those things outside the hospital. Residency, no matter where you go, is going to be hard because surgical training is hard. But it makes it a lot more enjoyable when you can go home and treat yourself and have luxuries. And so I think that that's something that's not big city about it, but is a really big perk. And then I think, as Chris and Sarah alluded to, there's tons of opportunities to get all the big city fixes that you want. And for them, the people, I grew up in Anchorage, Alaska, so I can't speak to it, but from the people that I've talked to here that did grow up in bigger cities and were worried about it, have been very happy with kind of the assortment of things there are to do, and especially hitting up Detroit and Chicago very frequently, which is something that's easy and cost affordable. And so just a little plug for some benefits of the small city part.
All right, well, thanks everybody for joining us. I think we need to wrap up now. In particular, thanks to Teddy and Colleen for organizing this. Thanks to Sarah, Chris, and Maya for being here and giving the residents a voice in the Meet the Chair and helping me out with questions. And thanks to Alec, Maggie, Sarah, Katie, and Madison for coming up here and asking questions and being part of our panel. And then to everyone else who asked questions and for participating and listening. And I think you heard it here. If you come to Ann Arbor, you can buy a house and still indulge your fancy cheese habit. All right, thanks everybody.